Every year we publish our results, and for our most recent year, for the results that we published this January. And this is a big sample. It's like 16,000 people. Over the course of the first year, our members lost on average 16% of their body weight, which is much larger than just on the drugs alone. And then at the end of year 2, they lost 18% of their body weight. And so what really should stand out there is that not only will they keep losing weight, but they kept the weight off.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show. You are the CEO of Calibrate, which is a fascinating company with the rise of Wegovy and all of those types of drugs. I can't believe I miss Ozempic.
Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound. There's a bunch of them now.
And this whole idea of how do you lose weight using, that type of medication, but also kind of changing your own lifestyle and things of that nature. I've not used these things. Obviously, I've thought about it, but I haven't used it. So tell us advantages, disadvantages, and what Calibrate does in the mix of all of this.
Well, first of all, great to chat with you. So it's a pleasure to be on the podcast. Calibrate, what we do at Calibrate, and we were a pioneer in this space 5 years ago, was essentially dovetailing very powerful anti-obesity medications like the ones you just chatted about there, and to essentially physician and clinician-led lifestyle intervention and coaching platforms. So there are a number of different anti-obesity medications. The ones that are getting much of the mainstream press attention lately are what's called GLP-1s, and so those are Zepbound, which is as well as Wegovy and Ozempic, and these are very, very powerful drug therapies. And at Calibrate, we were utilizing these drugs in combination with lifestyle change and intervention platforms for about 5 years now. And our viewpoint is on this space is that these medications are figuratively and literally not the magic pill. They're very powerful. They'll help people lose weight. However, if people are just on the drugs alone and then they come off the drugs, all the research shows that they'll gain the weight back and sometimes more. And for us, with the real impact of our physician, clinician, lifestyle intervention and coaching platforms is that it allows people to lose weight, and actually more weight than if they were just on the drug alone, but more importantly, keep the weight off. And we have best of breed results on this. To my knowledge, we're the only company that actually publishes our results. And just to give you an idea of kind of the impact, every year we publish our results, and for our most recent year, for the results that we published this January. And this is a big sample. It's like 16,000 people. Over the course of the first year, our members lost on average 16% of their body weight, which is much larger than just on the drugs alone. And then at the end of year 2, they lost 18% of their body weight. And so what really should stand out there is that not only will they keep losing weight, but they kept the weight off. And that's really a testament to the gravitas and power of our clinician-led lifestyle intervention and coaching platform. And that people can make changes in their daily habits. And our curriculum focuses on what would be, I guess, traditional pillars of cardiometabolic health. So there's diet, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and behavioral health. But it's really the combination of the most appropriate medication for an individual at their stage of the journey in conjunction with the lifestyle intervention and coaching platform.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, there are obviously a lot of studies. A lot of people are using these drugs. There's a lot of people who are saying, hey, they might not be great. There's a lot of people saying that they're great. What do you think? They're safe? You feel good about them?
I do. And I think the research writ large is pretty supportive of that. These GLP-1 drugs, although they've been utilized for weight and obesity management for the last 4 or 5 years, and really coming into the cultural mainstream of the last, let's say, 24 months or so, these drugs have been used for diabetes in the early 2000, like 2010, 12 timeframe. So these medications have been around for a while, used and studied for well over a decade. And although a subset of the population may have side effects, for the most part, they're relatively minor. and particularly if you are, being managed with if your prescription is being managed with a physician, they can work with you to mollify the impacts of the side effects as well. But for the most part, these drugs are incredibly safe, particularly under the guidance and use of a physician.
With your physicians and coaches on the platform, I mean, what would a typical week or month look like for somebody who joined Calibrate?
As they first come on board, we will do a clinical health intake assessment, learn about their medical history, because for some people, GLP-1 drugs may not be the appropriate path given their medical history. For others, GLP-1 drugs may be essentially utilized for much longer than just what their weight loss journey is as well. So they work with a physician to just get a better understanding of their cardiometabolic and frankly medical history in general. We typically also then work with the insurer of the member to see if this indeed it would be covered by their insurance. And once we kind of go through that process, we then will prescribe the most appropriate medication for the member. And at that point in time, they're meeting with our coaching team. So we have coaches that will work with them through the curriculum of our clinically led lifestyle intervention and coaching platform. They meet with the coaches synchronously, although virtually, every 2 weeks. And that's typically, the rhythm is they connect with the coaches every 2 weeks. A member is also sent a wireless enabled scale. So when they get in scale, we're automatically tracking, and we're able to kind of monitor their journey, and the coaches are there to help them walk through the curriculum if they have any questions the curriculum. If they're either plateauing, having some aspects in their weight loss journey, we find that our coaching cadence and frequency really does drive accountability and results as well. And then they'll typically meet then with doctors when they're at different stages of titration, either moving up in dosage or moving down in dosage after some weight loss gains have been made as well.
And so how did you get this? How did you figure all this out? What's your background? How did you come to do this?
So I joined Calibrate as CEO this January. And for me, my background up until this point in time kind of seemed very relevant. And, I'm kind of excited and honored to be part of the team here at Calibrate. My background had started out in management consulting decades ago. And I'd spent most of my time in software and technology, and then moved into the video game space, where I'm the president of a video game company. But my career took a pivot towards healthcare. I think, like many people's, it's usually due for personal reasons. And my story was, a family member was battling latter stages of cancer, and as a family, we were looking for home healthcare options, and frankly, we're pretty disillusioned and distempered with the choices available to us at that time. And so, in retrospect, or rather hubristically, I thought, what, I could do better. I had started my own companies before, again, in the software space, in the internet space, nothing to do with healthcare, but, just saw so much opportunity and need for just for better home healthcare solutions for families. And so I stepped away from being GM and president of a video game company to start my own home healthcare and hospice supportive company here in Portland, Oregon, where I live. And so hired a team of clinicians, MDs, NPs, docs, to help me get licensed and credentialed to practice home healthcare and hospice supportive care here in the Pacific Northwest, and hung out my shingle trying to cater to families and referral sources looking for a higher degree of professionalism and responsiveness from their home healthcare partners. And fortunately, that positioning resonated. Within a few months, I had a few hundred employees, the vast majority of which are part-time and hourly certified nursing assistants and personal caregivers. But the care model we had really resonated well, and grew that to a few offices, and ultimately ended up selling the business, but still stayed really involved in long-term and post-acute care. But at that time, I shifted more to the investor side, investing in assisted living and skilled nursing communities. From a career standpoint, actually spent the next several years of my career in veterinary medicine. So still very much healthcare, but on the companion pet side of things, and was led hospital operations for the world's largest veterinary practice. And by the time I left, we had 5,000 veterinary clinics, 80,000 employees. We would see tens of millions of pets in a year. And, for me, I love the pace and innovation in that space. Veterinary medicine, although healthcare doesn't have some of, I'll say, the innovation headwinds that you might face in human healthcare, but got lured back into human healthcare, this time on the payor side of things. So, really got a deep look into, I'll say, the economic engine of U.S. healthcare, as well as, access as well. Payers are, certainly the way that many people, have access to healthcare. And while there, I was working for one of the multi-state blues, really learned how to roll out, I'll say, innovative new models and technology and solutions, ultimately aimed at increasing access to care, reducing the total cost of care, and more importantly, improving patient and healthcare outcomes. And, learned a lot of it rolling out those solutions at scale. And then from there, my arc was as a health tech CEO. So I led the company that was in the clinician staffing and scheduling space, and then moved into a telemedicine virtual care platform, again, focused more on the post-acute side of things. And, as my career continued to progress, I started, doing more and more executive board and director work and advising. And then, prior to joining Calibrate, I was in the venture capital space with a fund called Redesign Health, which specifically focuses on early stage healthcare innovation. I was enjoying that immensely. But then the Calibrate opportunity came up, and I was familiar with the weight obesity management solutions. And from my vantage, Clint, I think this is one of the few points of light in our healthcare sector that has the true promise of reducing total cost of care. And then, more importantly, at the individual level, these results are, truly astounding. Like it is life-changing results at the individual level. And then to think at scale, this could have the impact of reducing total cost of care. I was kind of enamored with that. It seemed like a capstone to a lot of the work I had done on my career journey to that point. I've had background in software, I had background in multi-healthcare ops. I had an understanding of the payer space, and this just felt like it was a great meld and intersection of all those things. And I was really excited to have the opportunity here at Calibrate.
Yeah, what I like about what you're doing is you're going after the cause, not the symptom, right? And so, why are we as unhealthy in the United States? Because the cost all comes when you have to go see the doctor, right? That's where the costs start racking up. If you can do preventative type things, which is what you're advocating for here, and which is what Calibrate does, in conjunction with these pills, it seems like that's the right way to go.
Absolutely. Obesity, particularly in the U.S., it's an epidemic. It's the most daunting chronic condition that we face. Over 42% of U.S. adults are clinically obese. Over close to 75% are clinically overweight. And obesity is just a driver, or is affiliated with many of the other most prevalent chronic conditions: hypertension, cardiac related or cardio-related chronic conditions, diabetes, of course, sleep apnea. My analogy is that obesity is like the center pin in bowling. If you can knock it down, you can have an impact on a lot of other things that are, frankly, driving a lot of poor healthcare outcomes and driving a lot of costs within our healthcare sector today. And so, by us focusing specifically on weight and obesity management, I think we can have over-index amount of impact on the broader healthcare outcomes, as well as cost implications as well.
What does a typical day look like for you as CEO?
So Calibrate is fully remote. It was a company that was essentially launched in the 2019, 2020 timeframe. So just prior to COVID, but certainly as a company, we started scaling in COVID. And largely we're a remote company. I live on the West Coast. Much of my team lives, on the East Coast and in the Midwest as well. So my day is it starts early. I probably work, I'll say, Central Time Zone hours, if you will. So usually, I get up and I typically connect with our leadership team just to make sure we've got a pulse on everything that's going on. And for me, it's leading a company in a remote environment is something I've had experience with my previous roles as well. But there's a lot of time on Zoom. I will say that. We try to connect with the executive leadership team in person. I'll say at least once a quarter, if not more, and that's important, especially as we continue to build and scale here at Calibrate. My days are spent on I'm really trying to focus on what we call our strategic imperatives. There's things that we're trying to focus on, and I have a phenomenal team. For us at Calibrate, it's we see ourselves as a clinical care company. We're a clinical company. Yes, we utilize technology, but at the end of the day, the core aspect of Calibrate is that we're treating members in their weight and obesity management journeys.
What have you learned about leadership doing a fully remote company? Like, how does someone be a great leader in a entirely remote company? I'm sure so many leaders are wondering how that works.
No, it's a great question. I feel I'm still always adding to that arsenal as well. I will tell you, as I reflect on it, some of my observations are, I think, actually leading innovation in a remote environment is more challenging. Full stop. What I really did like when everyone was in an office is that if there was an idea or a problem came up, you would just have to walk down the hall and chat with someone who would be involved in the solution or the diagnosis of the issue, and a bit of spontaneity and things would just kind of happen. I find spontaneity in a remote world more difficult. You have to now schedule time to connect with people, and just it can be challenging. Even at Calibrate, we're not a huge company, we're a couple hundred employees, but even getting time on the calendar can be a challenge. So just this pace of innovation, I think, can be challenged unless you are really thoughtful and intentional on that as well. And so that's why at Calibrate, the executive leadership team, we have standing meetings and such that we try to create and have a forum for spontaneity, if you will. It almost sounds ironic to plan for spontaneity, but that's what we're trying to do, is essentially have the forum for this stuff to come up, because healthcare innovation is hard. It's a team sport, and it's quite iterative as well. And so you kind of need to have that, I'll say, baked into the processes. I think what is also challenging in a remote environment is just the alignment across the board, from CEO to the folks that are working with our members day in and day out. And that takes, I would say, relentless prioritization and communication, and I would say repetitive communication. When you think you've done it enough, you're probably halfway there in terms of, in terms of cascading messages down to the team. And so, for us at Calibrate, we're doubling down on that actually right now, in terms of ensuring that the team is kind of focused on our key priorities and initiatives. And it's been a thoughtful and intentional process now as we're kind of rolling that communication out, and trying to define people's roles or responsibilities and accountabilities in that as well. But that's for me, the challenge is the alignment side of things, and just to make sure that people understand how things fit and how decisions should be made, because our goal is to empower folks closest to our members and to make those decisions. And that can be very, very, very challenging.
Oh yeah. Well, it must be useful from a talent perspective. You can now hire from anywhere. It seems like an enormous advantage.
Absolutely. I think from a talent pool standpoint, removing any geographic restrictions is certainly powerful. So, we are also very fortunate at Calibrate that every member of the team is fully supportive and driven by the mission. That's a benefit, I think, being in healthcare in general is that there's people who are on this journey with you on the team that are there because they're in it for the mission and the cause. And that is, I think, a powerful enabler for us. And then it becomes kind of the job of us as leaders to ensure we're harnessing that advantage, but still how the mission and cause is linked to everything. So we have our mission, we have the strategic imperatives. So those are the strategic kind of focus areas that we're working on that we believe will essentially augment our ability to carry out our mission. And then from those strategic initiatives come the work streams that follow, whether it's product roadmap, process improvements, team and human capital planning. But everything needs to be tied into the mission, and it becomes really a focus on how do you communicate that to the team so they understand and they're aligned, and just as part of feel they have input in it as well.
Right.
What are the challenges in that remote environment is on the innovation side of things. And in terms of I'll say a leadership paradigm, I would love it if everyone on the team were to agree on a certain path, and that's what we have to do. I have found that over my career, that can be a challenging thing to do, is to get that consensus. And you can do it, but I think it usually comes at the expense of time. And when you're in early stage healthcare innovation, time is not necessarily one of the inputs that you have a lot of. And for us, I think at Calibrate, it's really the focus on alignment versus agreement. We want everyone to align on the path, and align doesn't necessarily mean agree. Align means that we as a team have decided to go this route, and the focus is then execution on that. For me, I think one of the key aspects to ensuring that alignment model works and is successful is that folks on the team feel that they have a voice. So if they have an opinion, it is heard. There's you create the forum, you create the venue for people to voice their thoughts, their input, and once a decision is made, even though it may be different than what their perspective is, we can all commit and align to go forward. And so, giving people, the opportunity in the venue to voice their input is huge. But agreement is a tough hurdle to get. Alignment is what we're focused on, and doing so, I think, allows us to kind of keep that pace up.
How are you thinking about artificial intelligence? How are you implementing it?
So, for us, it's a journey. Right now, we see and utilize AI as a tool to make our teams more efficient or effective. So whether that be in aspects of chatbots or decision call escalation and call routing, it's really meant to. How it's really being utilized today for us is more on, I'll say, the member experience side as opposed to the clinical experience side. I try to keep up on AI and the advancements on AI as much as possible. Been involved in, the implementation of AI for almost a decade now, and it's been interesting to be part of that journey, and especially over the last 12 to 18 months, just how fast it has grown. There's a definitive hockey stick there around the ChatGPT 3 launch, but for us, it's really seen as making the lives easier on our coaches and our clinicians. At no point in time or have we propagated using AI on the clinical side, if you will. And as I continue to read, the advancements that have been made are pretty impressive. AI can now pass MCATs and diagnose certain elements better than human doctors apparently. But that's a different world. So right now, I would say we have a pretty strong delineated wall or barrier between kind of the use of AI on the member side, where that's kind of where we're on the member experience side, versus on the clinical experience side. In terms of areas where I think it could be helpful on the clinical side, is when it comes to with regards to prescriptions and medications. That can kind of be a blind side in people's healthcare teams. You'll have multiple different providers prescribing medications, and in many cases there's not one nexus or point of contact on the care team that has a full, robust point of view. As I think about it, there may be ways in which AI can help with that, at least the tracking of that, to ensure we have a full and holistic view of folks' medications, because it can lead to some pretty significant downside issues with contraindications and just lots of medications that have been prescribed when there's not necessarily one person playing point on it all. And perhaps that's an opportunity. Use cases is one in which we have not gotten into, but I think that is an opportunity for AI that could be helpful.
Yeah, Yeah, it does seem like AI is rapidly growing to a point where who knows what it's capable of in 5, 10 years, right? But you've got to think about like, what is it capable of 5, 10 years and what is it capable of in the next 6 months? Which is kind of an
Yeah.
interesting challenge as a leader.
And it makes long range planning with AI challenging just given the rate of acceleration within it. So I think of us, when I look at our product roadmaps, it's typically 6 to 12 months. With anything within 6 months is a little bit more concrete stuff. 6 to 12 months is a little bit more malleable. And the focus right now on AI for us is really seen as efficiency, effectiveness tool on the member experience side. And just I think it can help with some asynchronous communications and really dealing with some member issues that may not be clinical, but helping address and ideally solve them more quickly.
Finally, we end every interview the same way with the same question. And that is, at CEO.com, we believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
It's a fantastic question. I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to start and found the company, coming out of business school in my mid to late 20s. And that opportunity, starting my own company, becoming an entrepreneur, was a huge kind of reflection point in my career. At that point in time, I was unable to have the confidence in myself to build things myself, hire teams, try to have an impact on things that mattered most to me. And I don't think I would have had the career I had today without that first founding of a company. It was a customer relationship management software that was focused on the automotive space. It had nothing to do with healthcare, but it was a business school classmate and I, we founded the company. And not only was my colleague Thomas incredibly important in that, but as I think back, it was the gentleman that wrote the check to fund us. His name is Jim Lavelle. He was a CEO of a very successful technology company, and he saw, a glimmer of promise in Thomas and myself, and what we wanted to build. And he wrote a check to fund us. And I think without that catalytic event, my career would have been very, very different. And I think about Jim a lot. Today I'm kind of a seed or an angel investor in a number of technology companies as well. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity without him having confidence and conviction in a couple of, guys in their mid to late 20s. And, I think that was a big bet for him. Like it's not like, we had pedigrees and track records back then. And yet he saw something in us, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us. It's been incredible to hear your story. Incredible what you're doing with Calibrate. Best of luck with everything. We should have you on in like 6 months to a year and just get an update on how things are going, because the whole world's going to be different then.
It is a space that is characterized by a lot of fluidity and change, and I would love to, Clint. It would be fun to catch up then.
Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate it, man.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.